What's up, everybody? Nate Markham here. Welcome to Shoot the Gap. It's the IDP Fantasy Football Show on the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. Tonight, on Thursday, not like Friday from last week, so I got my days straight. We will continue this deep dive of 2 weeks left, fellas. 14 days to the 2023 NFL rookie draft class with the best rookie cornerback prospects, or at least rookie cornerback prospects. Best will be to TBD, as they say. So stay tuned as we break down what makes these prospects exciting options for IDP Fantasy Football League. What's up, everybody? But hey, before we get started with tonight's show, do me a favor. Make sure to head over to our YouTube page, subscribe for get more of that incredible, actionable fantasy football content. You get advice, topics ranging from Dynasty to Redraft to DFS, yada, yada, yada. But of course, most importantly, IDP, we got you covered. Also, if you don't mind, make sure you head over to fantasyandframes.com. Read all of our latest article postings, see our player rankings. Also, remember to hop on to YouTube if you have any comments that you want to see. If you want to see Hollywood run the 40-yard dash, you want to see Austin, I would say, slap and beat Hollywood in the 20-yard dash, 10-yard cone, 3-cone drill, vertical leap, spelling bee, whatever it is you want. If you're on Twitter, we cannot see your questions or comments. Please head over to our YouTube channel so we can get you the necessary answers you would need to win your league. Thank you. Guys, how are you? Good to see you both.
Doing great. Better than Hollywood.
Hollywood, this is your cue to talk now.
True.
Sorry, point to you.
That's not true. No one does better than Hollywood. No one is greater than Hollywood, ever. At any time, in any place, ever. Not possible.
I like that. Good strong retort. That's 1 point for you, Hollywood, for saying you're the best ever. Guys, last week, Austin.
That should be strike 3 for Austin. That should be.
It should be, but it's all right.
I'm the umpire in this game, and my strike zone is extremely narrow, and so
Good.
I don't give a lot of strikes, a lot of balls. Pitch, and Hollywood, at your pace, you're going to exceed the pitch clock. Therefore, I'll be issuing a lot of free passes tonight. But you never know, Hollywood. Just remember, hey, I'm still impartial, because if there's impartiality, I don't know if that's a word. Q check that one, everybody. But we'll say it is. The cornerback position will probably require a lot of that, But hey, so we alluded to this last week. We discussed prospect linebackers. If you haven't checked that out, go watch that episode on our YouTube channel, download the podcast, listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. We discussed the IDP linebacker landscape, which was by far I don't want to say the most important, but definitely an area of priority. And so that being said, most of us have been playing IDP for a while. Hollywood, Austin, this is your what year?
This is my 3rd year now.
Okay.
Going into my 4th, so.
Perfect. You and I are basically on the same track when it comes to the time frame and everything like it. So learning, we're still adolescents when it comes to this. Definitely. Compared to some of the others. But, one thing that we've learned in that short time is that we've kind of looked down on cornerbacks for IDP. And this would be my first question to many. Hollywood, I'm going to ask you this question real quick before we get too deep into the weeds. Do you prefer to play in a quarterback premium or however you want to deem cornerback premium? Is that value at the position by increasing the point total, or just overall designation of having a true cornerback designated spot? Do you prefer to have that, or forget about them and just strictly stick with most of the safeties?
Sorry, the boss man has messed me up here in the chat. first of all, I prefer position specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to make your corners relevant. Now, for me, if you're asking my personal preference, it's position specific with a premium, right? Because it's kind of the same thing with defensive tackles. You want that premium because that kind of levels the playing field for them a little bit. I know our buddy Johnny the Greek, he's a big proponent of streaming, right? He streams that position no matter what the league is, no matter what the scoring, he streams the hell out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I agree with that. But if you got to know your league scoring, right? And if you know your league scoring, I feel like there's some corners that you can take advantage of, and you don't have to string them. You're not changing every week. You can plug and play.
So, Austin, the one thing that I would take from that too, and maybe you may do the same, is that does that devalue at draft day, knowing that there's more of a shakeup year in and year out? The consistency of the top 10 is not quite as well consistent as it is in other positions. Not to say that linebacker, defensive line, safety has always been consistent year over year. We've seen they change there, but I think that if you were to look at the last couple of years, you'd see at least the same name, 4 or 5 of the same names in the top 12 at the other position. So do you like to invest early in corner, or are you thinking, if you can get that playmaker, if it was quarterback specific, not corner and safety blend?
I have not played a position specific league defensively yet. But I would say I would probably treat it similarly to tight ends. You're either getting those top guys, or you're just punting the heck out of it and hoping for the best. So
yeah, that's a great comparison. It really is. And I don't even know if cornerbacks have if there's a Travis Kelce among quarterbacks. Right. I don't. I'm not sure if that one guy exists, but maybe we'll find some in this rookie profile, which is asking quite a bit, because long gone are the days of like we used to do the interception or bust players. It was, now we're looking at certain metrics, roles of the cornerback, and you're trying to use those stats and everything and determine their potential fantasy value as it applies, not knowing, and here we go again, not knowing landing spot. Boo. Corey's supposed to have a drop, I'm sure, for that by now. By next week, we'll have one. Oh, terrible. Nope. I don't like that one at all. But, that's what we're going to look at. So, God, that'll get me off. Austin, I want to ask you that first question. What stats, metrics, or roles are you looking at to determine their fantasy value?
Yeah, like I said many times before, everything comes back to opportunity. Mm-hmm. How do you get opportunity on the field? And with cornerbacks, this kind of be like the first time we're diving into a segment of this, of being closer to the ball somehow. Because with linebackers, defensive linemen, edge rushers, they're on the line of scrimmage. The ball's, 30, 45 feet from them constantly. With corners, you got people way out over to the sides, deep most of the time. So then, okay, how do they get around the ball? For me, I'm going to start looking at whether they're playing a lot of man coverage or a lot of zone coverage. Mm-hmm. With man, their job is to stay within a yard or two of that guy, preferably as close as possible. So if the ball gets thrown that way, they have a chance to touch the ball, and that's the key to getting fantasy points. Either touching the ball or touching the player that's got the ball, with tackles or pass breakups, interceptions, whatever it may be. So if a guy's playing, a lot of man, I'm going to prefer that over a guy in zone, because he could have a 20-yard zone and somebody could be 15 yards away from him still and make the catch, and he might not make the tackle in open field. It's a lot easier to make that man-to-man tackle. After that, you're looking at guys. Sorry about that. You're looking at guys that are being targeted, because if the ball's not coming their way, they're not going to make a play. They're going to be away from the ball still. So you need to have some sort of target volume against them, which would lead to those pass breakups and then I'm looking to the solo and assisted tackles after that.
Gotcha. You missed your opportunity to say that one of the metric you're looking at is the dog in him by the barking in the background. That was on cue. You had that picked up and ready to roll.
Yeah.
But next time, you'll know that for next time.
Maybe next time. And in the back of your head, you got interceptions, right? But that's not something that is going to stick. You saw Trayvon Diggs 2 years ago now. Mm-hmm. He had a ton of interceptions. What did he do last year? Not much, interception-wise. So you're really looking for those pass breakups or that forced incompletion percentage. That takes into account, pass breakups, interceptions, and even just tight zones of them being there to make the ball drop out of the receiver's hand. But then, you also have to take into consideration run defense. Do they try to make tackles? You had L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Ramsey last year come into the top 10 of fantasy and frames IDP scoring for defensive backs because they were in on the run defense a lot. So I know L'Jarius Sneed played like somewhere near 500 snaps from the slot. That means they're closer to the ball constantly. So that's something to also kind of look at. And then, you had guys like Marlon Humphrey, Kenny Moore, Taron Johnson in past seasons that have also played that kind of slot corner, closer to the line of scrimmage, getting more tackles. So I would say that's the biggest thing to look at is how are they going to be around the ball? That will give them fantasy points.
Yeah, and you've touched on quite a bit of the players. Like if you look at that run play tackling metric that PFF grades, and you isolate it to just the quarterback position. And last year, you look at the names that are at the top of this list, and you see Desmond King II, L'Jarius Sneed, Taron Johnson, Isaiah Simmons. They classify as a corner, probably rightfully so at this point now, but whatever. And just so happens those were 4 of the top 5 guys in run play tackling, and all 4 happen to play the majority of their snaps in the slot. So we're seeing that correlation between the two, probably as a floor engaged, or I would say a little additive to their floor play. I wouldn't use it as the end all be all in terms of choosing player 1, drafting that much higher, but I think that it does support the cause or the case for volatility. It reduces that chance of volatility. So that's an excellent point. Hollywood, is there any other of the stats or metrics that you look at when you're trying to evaluate it, especially a rookie corner going into this ever evolving NFL where there's pace change and everybody's elite, and you're really seeing, and also that kind of goes in that too, what you were saying, Austin, is that in college, we're seeing a lot more of the pass heavy game than we're seeing the run. And so this indoctrination, if you will, or this evolution to get used to the run play is a little bit of a learning curve. But Hollywood, what else should we focus on when we're evaluating these players?
Right. So I like Austin's thoughts on being around the ball, right? I like that. But I mentioned this on another podcast a few weeks ago. Me and Dan, we were my former co-host IDP Nation. We were talking about this, and it's like he said, interceptions doesn't really tell the whole story, like Austin said, right? And neither does sacks. What we come up with is indicator stats, right? So like for cornerbacks, we want to look at not really the interceptions. We want to look at the PBUs, because the pass breakups, that tells us, okay, maybe you're not getting the interception, but the opportunity, you're getting the opportunities. You're in position to make those plays. So it's the same with a pass rusher, right? You're looking at quarterback hits or quarterback pressures. You're wanting that volume. Now, what you do with those chances, that's on you. But usually those two kind of go hand in hand. So, we're looking at PBUs, and I would also throw in solo tackle rate, right? Because if you're playing in premium scoring leagues for corners, then you're probably getting a lot of points for solo tackles. So you want to look at that solo tackle rate, right? I mean, you can have 100 tackles, but if 50 of them are solos, 50 are assisted. So, I would rather look for a player that's got 90 tackles and 80 solos, because that scoring, that premium on those solo tackles is going to be a lot more points for your fantasy team.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's, I think, it's hard. It's really hard to try to figure out which corner is going to take that next step. Because there's just so many different, like we've said, caveats to the overall change in the play and opportunity. And we'll see of the ones, like the one nice thing that I think that we see with these corners is there's really only about, I'm going to say, 2 ways to go when you're a high draft capital from a corner. There's a chance that they stay in their true position, or they, which all includes slot into that, or maybe they drop back and they play, safety. And that's not even as likely as what we've seen over the years. I mean, it's possible for sure, but some of these top end corners that a lot of the ones are going to discuss, I think we have a list of some that could turn into that. And that's the one thing that I think that would be interesting, is to try to identify how a position change could affect those guys doing so.
Right. Yeah.
Hollywood, I'm going to start with Austin here, because he gets the privilege of covering, in my opinion, the number one corner prospect, and he's an Illini. So I think that didn't give it away. Austin, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. Devin Witherspoon, he played like the best corner this year for this rookie class. So he's 5'11 and a half, 181 pounds. So a little bit smaller, but it didn't matter. He was, he played 75.9% of his snaps in man coverage, which that's what we want. We want somebody that's playing man coverage a lot. In 12 games this season, he had 41 tackles, 32 which were solo, 9 assisted, 2.5 tackles for losses. So, not probably nothing that he's going to stick up with, but it's notable that he's back there. 14 pass breakups and 3 interceptions. Those are the important ones.
Yeah.
He was third in forced incompletion percentage with 29% in the Power 5 this past season, which, like I said before, that's tight windows, that's pass breakups, and that's interceptions. So nobody was throwing on him, and he's playing in the Big Ten. Those aren't just random quarterbacks and wide receivers out there. Those are guys that are going to get drafted. He was the cornerback 1 in Power 5 and pass breakups and man coverage in 2022 with 9. He, in total tackles and man coverage, he came in at 2nd in the Power 5, and his solo to assist ratio was absolutely stellar. And another big one here is he only allowed 71 yards after the catch, which was cornerback 17 on the year. But that means he was on his guy so tightly that once they made the catch, they were going down immediately. So it didn't really matter. So that helped him with the tackle right there. And then he also had 16 defensive stops, which was 13th most in 2022 for the cornerbacks this year, in 2022. So he's a guy that, when I looked at the scouting reports, because I'm not a big film guy yet, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, so I rely heavily on scouting reports from trusted sources.
Yeah.
He hits hard, and he times those hits very well whenever the receiver's breaking out of their to catch the ball. Hard hitter. He does well in man coverage and versus the run, which we didn't see a lot of his run tackles, but the scouts said that he's very good in the run defense. He had great quickness and change of direction, which allowed him to be all over the field. Didn't matter where he was playing, he could make the play. And, whether he was in press coverage or man coverage or even a little bit of zone, Zone was his weakest point, but not bad still. He was able to end the play wherever it was. The one knock on him was he had limited tape. His zone coverage was a little weaker than what we wanted. But he just started playing DB or cornerback as a junior in high school, I believe. So he's got a lot of time to grow. I believe if he gets drafted by a team that uses him heavily in the man coverage this year, he will be pretty dominant in quarterback leagues, especially the quarterback specific leagues. So I'm comfortably taking him as my cornerback one.
And to Tyler and answer, are you definitely drafting him over Christian Gonzalez? Definitely is a little strong. I have him ahead of Christian Gonzalez. Now, I won't say that it is so far removed that it's I don't know. See, they're 1 and 2. They're 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Nevin Witherspoon so the areas that stand out to me, like watching them for the majority of the season. Granted, I don't get a chance to watch every game on Saturday because I work, but I do jump in and out. He only had, the 25% NFL quarterback rating, 34% reception percentage this year. The crazy thing that even kind of can also go overlooked, and you touched on it, in terms of the yak and everything else. Break it down a little bit further, and he allowed over 32 yards in one game. And in that game that he allowed over 32 yards, he had to be targeted 15 times in order to do so.
And that was week 1.
Yeah. And if you see him where he watched the game, I think it was against Indiana, he destroys the running back. Christian Gonzalez definitely, I think, will fit into some people's boards. I don't know if they'll be that much higher than Witherspoon. Size alone, I think, could probably tilt the scale just a little bit. But, I mean, just jumping off tape, and I'm not a tape guy either. That's far from it to say. I mean, I've watched enough football over the years to say that I have an idea of what I'm looking at. Right. But, I mean, you can just see it. You can just tell when a person's got the reaction, when he's got the tackling, when he's got the idea to read the quarterback when need be, and all the hip movements and turn and run. Can I differentiate one versus the fourth best? No, but you know when you see it. And I know that's such a vague BS way to do it, but it's the truth. And you talk about, fantasy outlook for Devin Witherspoon. What can we expect? Like, do you think it's an immediate transition into like a cornerback one in a would you put him as a DB one at all in any capacity if you don't have cornerback specific positions?
I don't think I could pull that trigger as a cornerback one. In rookie drafts, yes, all the way. You just don't, it's using the cop out of you don't know where he's going to land.
Yeah.
What's his role going to be? Will teams pick on him because he had so much success? I like some rookie cornerbacks that they do. I don't think so. I think it's going to be like I don't want to say he's a Sauce Gardner, but that would be my closest comparison of recent history of, hey, Sauce was the guy that nobody wanted to throw to against.
Yeah.
So will they do that? I would probably lean to they probably avoid him a little bit more than most rookies.
Yeah. And so one of the hardest things to do in identifying corners when they're from an IDP standpoint, because we could talk just actual X's and O's and talk football. Right. And anybody that's trying to do that evaluation of who do I want as an actual IDP player, IDP member of my team, then you've touched on it. Landing spot, situation. I'm going to talk about a player who, from my perspective, if I'm looking at history in terms of how can a corner become a preeminent IDP stalwart as a defensive back in terms of safety and corner combined. And we touched on it earlier. Most likely, they need to be at the line of scrimmage in some capacity, a slot corner, able to, make big plays because you have to have the splash plays. The ability to chip in with run play tackling. That might be the short sided area of this gentleman's game. And when I say short, I mean 5'9", 184, not big. But Clark Phillips III out of Utah plays bigger than 5'9". He was the Jim Thorpe finalist. Jorge, if you're listening, he was the Chuck Bednarik semifinalist. Or as I said last week, he was the loser when it comes to that. But then again, he was also a loser for Jim Thorpe Award. But two of those awards, both semifinalists and finalists, started every game. Every game he played, he started, which was 31 for Utah. To me, as a freshman, starting in Big Five, Power Five, I guess, that says a lot about the ability to step on the field and not be a liability. And he did so. The freshman year was limited. But this sophomore season in 2021, 14 games, 45-16 solo to assist ratio. Not quite Devin Witherspoon for sure. 1 tackle for a loss, 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, 13 pass defenses that year, which was 8th in the NCAA, and a forced fumble. Fast forward to 2022, and all of a sudden now Utah says, hey, we loved you out wide. Loved what you did. But we're going to move you into the slot a little bit more. We're going to increase your slot percentage. We're going to basically say, hey, we're going to take you from 16% slot roll usage in 21, go to 38%. And in turn, what did he do? He had less tackles. I think that kind of goes along with the script of the Utah defense as well. 16 solo to 8 assists, 12 games played, 2 tackles for a loss, a sack. Unlikely for him to get sacks. He's not a big pass rusher. Here's the kicker. The 6 interceptions, 3rd in the NCAA. 2 of those were returned for touchdowns, 6 more pass defenses. So the career that he put up in terms of what Hollywood was talking about earlier, being around the ball, was that was him. Or I guess that's how you say it. He is him, or whatever the kids say. I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be hip, and I'm not. I'm talking about cornerbacks from an IDP standpoint. I might be a couple steps away from the cool ladder for sure. But in 21, what happened? Like I said, the solo to tackle ratio, the 54 total. Well, depends on who you look at. Let's do this. PFF has it as 54 solo tackles in 21. 45 is what he was credited as to Football Reference. If we want to build up his value, we go with the 54, which was the 12th most in the NCAA. I mean, you can look at a bunch of different stats. And Austin, that's the one thing I'll tell you about IDP evaluation. Stephanie, thank you. He is him. As I was done, I'm going to get this eventually. 44 is not that old. I'll figure this all out. But what I was saying is, you can build a narrative for a player based off of which statistics you want. As long as the consistency is there, don't even worry. You notice how I didn't skip a beat with that? Could care less. Don't care. Because if one place tells me one thing, another place tells me another thing, as long as it is backed by other statistics, I'm good with that. Yep. And from a player evaluation standpoint, you'll see how those go along. As I said, he was undersized, but that tenacity he plays with is incredible. And so he's all around the ball, good ball skills, 9 career interceptions. So you do the math earlier from what I was saying. And it just screams to me, slot corner in the NFL, that's going to be eyes on the quarterback. He's going to jump, make plays on the ball. I want to see the tackle volume. I think that those slot corners we talked about earlier that were at the top of the list in terms of overall scoring, the L'Jarius Sneeds, the Desmond Kings, a lot of those guys also happen to have some pass rush ability, at least pressure wise, with L'Jarius Sneed leading the way last year with 18 of them. But maybe we'll see a little bit of that. But most likely, I just think that the opportunity, if I'm picking one person out of this class that I think has a chance at the end of the season to say, okay, of all the corners that are entering the draft, which one will show up in the top 36 amongst defensive backs? I'm going to say I might lean on Clark Phillips III. What do you think?
That's pretty bold. I could see it, but I don't know. I would probably either go with Devin Witherspoon or the next guy I'll talk about.
Yeah. And that's safe. And safe will
Yes.
will do you. The good news is this: Draft Capital will say you have to draft Devin Witherspoon or maybe the next guy you're going to talk about or one of the other guys we're going to talk about earlier, or you wait to the last pick and Clark Phillips is there and you snag him and then you just sit and wait for a landing spot if it's not already determined, or it could. Zach wants to, as a newbie, should I care about slot or outside cornerbacks when looking at fantasy value? And I mean, my 2 cents is this: fantasy value is directly related to fantasy scoring, I think, and statistics. And so if there was a true corner position, then yes, I think that typically that brings up the outside corners a little bit more. Without them, you have to really kind of dig a little deep to find one that graded overall in the at the end of the season. Hollywood, how high do you typically find outside corners finishing on a year-to-year basis?
Outside corners, I mean, all goes back to your scoring, right? Your scoring, your setup. I mean, if you look at Ahmad Sauce Gardner last year, he finished pretty high, right? Tariq Woolen, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're kind of the anomalies, but it can be done if you.
I lost him.
Oh, it can be done if situation, goes into that. I think that, like I said, that's what I find the most confusing with corners is it can be a big guessing game, unfortunately. Continue, Hollywood. Sorry about that. You cut yourself off.
I don't know where I left off. I said it can be done, right? I mean, Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen were kind of the anomalies last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you find the right one in the right situation, I think it can be done. There's value there. It seems like the slot corner is more the go-to spot for corners, right? Because they usually blitzing off the edge there. They're getting those sack opportunities. So I think a lot of fantasy managers lean towards the slot corner or the big nickel. But the outside guys, they can be value there.
Yeah, I think the slot builds the most stable footing. I think that probably gives you your highest floor. Probably also gives you your highest ceiling. But the outside guys will be sprinkled in unless it's, like we said, if it's a true corner situation you have to, then I don't mind looking outside. Drew wants to know, so where do you guys expect to see the first corner coming off the board in rookie drafts this year? Completely unrelated to our Fantasy and Frames rookie draft we have coming up, which will be my first IDP included rookie draft. Of course, totally unrelated. Let's see, Drew. Make sure that if you're ahead of me, then I would say draft real early. What do you think, Austin?
Oh, I'll have to throw this one to one of you guys. I haven't done a lot of the Dynasty drafts yet, so I'm still learning that part of it.
Yeah. I would say
so. Here's going to be the thing. Here's going to be the thing, right? I just said Sauce Gardner, Tariq Woolen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anomalies, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody's going to see that, and they're going to look at those two, and they're going to be like, "Oh, 2 rookies that just freaking balled out," and I think that's going to drive the price of rookie corners up unfairly because you're not going to get that every year.
That's fair.
Some of us more savvy, intuitive owners are going to be, that's not the normal. Pump the brakes, right?
Yep.
But I just think that's with any position, right? You have 1 or 2 players that come out and just freaking head and shoulders above the rest, and it drives the value up on, especially this time of year because it's rookie fever, right? Everybody's got it, and I got to have the next one. tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, and this, that, and the other. And I think that's what you're going to see with corners, especially with the safety class being a little less, right? So they're going to look at these corners and they're going to think, well, Sauce Gardner did it and Tariq Woolen did it. And, well, not everybody's Sauce Gardner, and you don't get as lucky as you do with Tariq Woolen a lot of times. So
no,
I think corners are going to get overdrafted. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these corners go third round, maybe even late second in a crazy league that scores. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's the key right there. I think you just said it too, I think people, if they were waiting to hear the answer after the explanation, it was that you were going to say that and then say, at the end of the first round. Even that's still great. Nobody's going to look at those 2 years. So it's still a third round, maybe second, because history has taught us one thing. If we go back to 2021, we look at, the 3 top corners as far as playing time were Tyson Campbell, Patrick Surtain, and Asante Samuel, none of which finished anywhere close to what you would need to finish in a corner designated role. Go back to 2020. And then, a little better production with some of these guys, but not much in that first year. So yeah, it's kind of an outlier, and I would be cautious to entertain that. But Austin, who if it's not Devin Witherspoon, then who?
The number 2 guy, Christian Gonzalez. He played at the University of Oregon this past season after transferring out of Colorado. He's 6'2", 201, so he's got a little bit more size than the other guys we've talked about so far. Let's see. In 2021, he had 53 total tackles. He followed that up in 2022 with 51. Consistency is good. In 2022, he had 35 solo, 16 assisted. He also had 7 pass breakups, and he got 4 interceptions, which are those big splash plays that we want. He did quite well in run defense. He finished as cornerback 22 in run defense tackle rate with a 9.2% across the entire college football, not just Power 5 conferences. That was with playing a minimum of 10 games and tallying at least 20 total tackles against the run. His man coverage tackle rate also was pretty high with 10.7, which has him as the cornerback 3 among all cornerbacks in man coverage, but that was in the Power 5. So there was some of those lower conferences that beat him out, but Power 5 is Power 5 for a reason. Looking at the scouting report, excels at the run support. That's why he's got those high tackle rates in the run defense. He played the 14th most box snaps, so he was near the line. We talked about it. That's important. He tracks the ball well in coverage, so we saw those pass breakup numbers decently high. We saw interceptions. He's around the ball. He can make plays whenever he needs to. He makes great angles to getting to the ball carrier, making those tackles in the open field. They don't really get away from him very often. And he has blazing speed to keep up with these NFL wide receivers like Tyreek Hill and all of these guys. Fantasy outlook-wise, love the tackling. Great solo to assist ratio. Love run defense tackling. We saw man coverage is good. Able to break up plays, break up passes. He's got speed. He's big. He can fight with anybody on the line of scrimmage and press coverage. So I would say that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that's physical, not afraid to get his nose in on the play. So, he's, like you said, he's right there neck and neck with Witherspoon. And I think it comes down to where do they land on who you're taking first.
Yeah, the Hollywood, I'm going to give you a mock draft question with Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon. Do you have an ideal landing spot? I mean, I know you've probably seen a ton of mock drafts of where they might be going, but is this as much fun from the IDP corner side as it is from like the offensive side, where it feels like we know an ideal landing spot is better if a wide receiver goes to Kansas City than if they ended up in, say, Baltimore. Can the same be said about a corner? Is there an ideal spot that you go, yeah, Gonzalez going to Detroit is perfect?
See, that's who I was going to say. Detroit's in a prime spot, right? They just got rid of Jeff Okudah, who was number 3 overall, right? They just traded the number 3 overall pick from a few years ago, but he couldn't stay healthy, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. If you can't stay healthy, availability, if you can't stay on the damn field, then it's going to be a rough ride. Who knows what they're going to do, but having 2 first-round picks, I feel like they're one of the early teams that could look at corners. If it's me, I'm probably If I'm Detroit, I'm probably looking at Witherspoon because I think his play style, aggressiveness, that dog mentality that he has, I think that fits what Matt Campbell wants, right? So if I'm looking at Detroit specifically, I think it's Witherspoon. Damn you, Nate. Sorry. If you're looking outside of that, would have said Atlanta, but they're the one that got Okudah. So I kind of think maybe that kind of takes them out of that look. And then it's just whoever needs corners. Tennessee at 11 could need a corner. I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, they need a corner. But I don't know that they're going to take one that early, right? I just think if Oakland needed a corner and Al Davis was still alive, he would be jumping all over Christian Gonzalez, right? Size, weight, speed, athletic freak, testing off the charts. I mean, just that's the kind of player he would eat up, right? So I think it's more more team by team, I think, preference. Devin Witherspoon, I think he'd be great in Detroit, but I don't know that they're going to go that early. I will say over the last, 2-3 years, we've seen corners go early, like top 10 early. So it wouldn't surprise me to see these corners start coming off the board real early. It's kind of a deeper class for corners, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them go early.
I wouldn't be shocked to see 2 in the top 10. I think that Gonzalez or Witherspoon, either one could go to Vegas. I think the Raiders are obviously, right now, their best corner might be David Long, potentially. That's not good. That's exactly. Not. And that's stretching. Now they're good at safety, but this is the next thing that I won't go too far into depth on this, but if you're a rookie corner going to a team that has no depth at corner and you're asked to be, realistically, I think Gonzalez or Witherspoon, whichever one were go to Vegas, they would immediately be the number 1 option there, which means their target volume, if they're lined up against, if they shadow, heaven forbid, against the opposing teams, especially if it's Vegas with the offenses in the AFC West, we could see one of the 2 targeted 90 plus times, which would give them a pretty decent floor. I maybe that's too far and going too in depth yet, but we'll circle back come draft day. Hollywood, on draft day, who's another corner that you think you'll be hearing his name spread amongst IDP circles?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Keely.
Oh, no.
Coming back? Nope. It's okay, buddy. It's all right. All good.
Wow. Just freaking wow.
Yeah. Don't even say, who cares, man?
IDP
cornerbacks. Well, good. Then
Keely Ringo before I cut out again here. So a lot of people are, depending on who you're asked, they're all over the place on him, right? But he's going to go first round. If I was betting, he's gonna go first. Now, when I say first, he's not going in the top 10, right? But he's gonna go in that 25 to 40 range, which puts him that late first, early second. And if I had to bet, I'm gonna go with that first because you had Tyson Campbell, and you had the other corner.
That narrows it down for me.
No, Tyson Campbell, Eric Stokes. Those were the two corners that Georgia had the last couple of years.
Oh, Stokes.
They went early, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went early, right? So,
Campbell was second round.
Yeah, but he was early second round, like the very first pick of the second round.
Yes, he was. Pick 33.
Yeah, so Ringo's better than both of those guys. 6'2", 207. That's safety size, and he's playing outside on the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
4.36, 154, 10-yard split. I mean, this dude tested off the charts. Played over 1,400 plus snaps the past two seasons combined. Only allowed 8 completions on 31 targets for 211 yards on 10-plus yard throws down the field. So if you're looking at long throws, you're probably be best to go somewhere else because he just doesn't give it up, right? My one question is with size, speed, instincts, right? That's a positive. World-class speed. He had a 10.43 100-meter time in high school, and for comparison, DK Metcalf ran a 10.36. So, big boy, and they can both run like a gazelle, right? So he's aggressive, he's physical, a solo stopper, plays best in zone coverage where he can come down and play the run defense. His change of direction is a little off, but that's because he plays like a freight train, right? Once he gets started, he's got one goal in mind, and that's to just hammer you. So change of direction, start, stop. His only knock in coverage that I saw was his ball awareness. And that's, for me, that's meaning he's a little late getting his head around or turning around to see where the ball's at. So, and he misses a few tackles, which is kind of crazy because if you go back and look at the last 2 years, 2021, he had 34 tackles, 26 solos, a 76.4 rate.
Mm-hmm.
I always say 75 and up is good. Then last year, 42 tackles, 37 solos, 88.1%. So
yeah. Well, let's be honest. The highlight reel for someone that size is just, I'm sorry, you back, Hollywood? There you go.
Yeah, I'm back. Just go on.
No, yeah, I have to ask you this because I don't know the answer. Do you know, is it Kelly Ringo? Is it Calais Ringo? Do you know, is that how it's
Keely Ringo? It's Keely Ringo as far as I have heard and know. It's Keely.
Well, I mean, he's, terrorizing the SEC, so I assume you'd probably know that more than I would. But right. Pretty impressive. I mean, realistically, everything on there, like from a first round perspective, he checks the box of everything that you would want, on top of the fact that he's 20 years old. So even the age, and when you say missed tackle rate, let's look, let's talk about age and not even maturity level or anything like that, but he's still young. He can very easily grow into a role, especially if he's asked to coaching scheme, dynamic, etc. I know those are things that go overlooked, but the right player in the right situation can evolve a guy who could just be, from an IDP standpoint, not just football, because we have to get away from the football talk, because the best corner in the world is not a good IDP option, typically speaking, to most people listening. To those nutcases like some of us that play in cornerback specific leagues where a pass breakup is worth 5 points, and all of a sudden, you're targeted 6 times, and you get 2 pass breakups, and you have the same week as someone with 7 tackles. We get the idea. But
right.
Hollywood, I want to hear what you have to take on this particular player, because he's in the mold, not in the same of Ringo, but Corey Trice out of Purdue. I know we could talk easily about there's plenty of other corners in this grouping. We haven't discussed Joey Porter Jr. We have Banks. There's a few others, but I think that at this point we're trying to reach for some of those could be's. And Corey Trice out of Purdue at 6'3", 215 might fit the mold as far as a person who is sneaky late in drafts, or just someone to pay attention to. 2022, 34 total tackles, 28-6 solo to assist ratio. He had chipped in 10 more pass breakups and had playmaking, ball hawking ability with 2 interceptions. That's coming off of a season-ending knee injury in 2021, which limited 22, and that's on the heels of a third 2020 season where he had 32 total tackles, a 28-4 solo to assist, and 2 more pass breakups. So you go past the injury concerns and you look at some of the advanced metrics, and you see in last season he was the quarterback, or the cornerback 25 in the Power 5 rank conference in run stopping. So will he be asked to play? Not probably in a zone coverage, but there's talks. I've seen some people say he might be a potential safety option. There's teams that might look for him to play the role of safety. Have you heard the same thing about him, Hollywood?
Yeah. And the first thing that jumps out is 6'3", 215, right? I mean,
right.
that's safety size right there. So, but with some of these receivers that are so big and tall, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of need that height. You kind of need that length. You kind of need that size, right? If you're out there with DK Metcalf, you're going to need somebody 6'3", 215 to cover him, right? So this is kind of one of them weird ones for me. Mm-hmm. I like him as a corner, but I could see certain teams playing him as that third safety, that big nickel safety, because of his size. So
exactly.
I think he's one of these players, we say about every player, but I think he's going to be one of these you're really going to have to see who drafts him, right? Who takes him, who picks him up. Because I think that will tell you more maybe about his role going forward.
And that's exactly right. And that's what I want to see, is him, landing with a team that might be able to prioritize him in that big nickel, especially if it's a team that has a tendency to get ahead in games and it's a heavy passing team, for one reason only, is his ability, that his 10th highest forced incompletion percentage in coverage shows that he's a good coverage corner as well. So it's not just the ability to slow the run down, which he was the quarterback 12 in box snaps in 22. So the ability to stay at the line of scrimmage checks my box. The ability to play coverage if needed checks my box. The quality of coverage checks the box. The size in the frame for the running game, the ball tracking and physicality when the ball's in the air. Another. So I see a lot. I don't hear a ton of conversation about him, but he's intriguing to me simply because of that transition. And there's not too many of these guys that are going to be drafted as a corner that might make the move to safety, whereas there'll be some of the safeties in the kind of weak safety class outside of Branch, maybe, and Trevadius. There's, I don't know. It's always interesting, fellas.
To hit on that a little bit, he entered Purdue as a safety. He spent like the first few weeks as a safety, then he moved to corner, and you just don't put up that stat line after an ACL. That's insane. Right. Not the year after. Well, no, ever.
Well, teams are going to do their due diligence, right? They're going to see that he tore his ACL, and they're going to put him through every kind of medical test, poke, prod. They're going to put him through the gamut And if they're okay with that, and clearly he's okay, right? I mean,
yeah,
he come back in 2022 and performs. So they're definitely going to check those. They have to, right? They have to check that box off. But man, the potential is there, and I love a player like that, right? Same thing with Keely Ringo.
Yeah,
that size, that height, that weight, that skill set. You have so many options in your secondary. You can play him as a corner. You can play him as a safety. You can put him in the slot. You can play him as a big nickel. It's like a queen on the chessboard. A player like that in the secondary, and you just don't find them very often.
You don't. And to wrap up everybody so far, we discussed Devin Witherspoon. From a size perspective, the opposite of those, but the ability to play in any, I think, within any NFL team that he's drafted as, definitely, I think consensus hour, either 1 or 2 overall this class. Obviously, I touched on the ability of Clark Phillips to play that slot role and be that slot guy of all these corners, at least in my opinion.
Clark Phillips. Love him.
I know a lot of people think that he's going to be outside. The tape says outside, but Utah felt better inclined for him at safety, in slot. His ability screams with that size. You touched on it with DK Metcalf as an example. When you're 5'9", teams are going to get sick of him just going over top of you, especially when his vert's not exactly, doesn't scream athletic.
But man, go back on
his tape. Go back and watch
his film, dude.
Yeah,
watching his film, you will not know he's 5'9", 184. He does not play to his size.
But that is that from an IDP standpoint, though, guys. That's why I'm hoping that maybe, not to say I'm wrong or right, but I'm kind of hoping that he is moved to the slot, because I think that's where the majority of his IDP value will be had. If he gets drafted to my football team, I'm comfortable with him being on the outside for sure. Christian Gonzalez, Austin, great job covering him. These corners, I think day one, we're going to see with the addition of Kelee Ringo and 4 of these names. Not going to be Clark Phillips. He'll be a second day guy, probably day 2, day 3, maybe. But don't be shocked to hear a bunch of these players' names as the season unfolds. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to incorporate some of them into IDP scoring. But guys, that's going to do it for this week's show. Hollywood, I'm sorry. Please don't be frustrated. Internet things happen. It's not the end of the world. It's fitting for an IDP conversation about collegiate cornerbacks getting ready to go into a draft before the draft starts, and we don't know anything else. But I'm just happy you could join us. Austin, I'm really happy that you were here with us to at least, thank God. You imagine me just trying to ramble through this by myself, but whew. And of course,
or be with Hollywood just alone.
That is scary. Many people have written in. Yes.
You two are going to poke the damn bear after this. Really? Is this? Oh, okay.
Okay. Your reaction time, if it's anything to do with your lag, I think we're pretty safe. We should be able to get away. Speaking of get away, don't forget to get away and drop that like and subscribe before you head out of here, please. And then go over to all of our socials and follow us for the latest new content that we're producing for all your fantasy football needs. I mean, it's never ending. The amount of information is incredible. Go over to fantasyandframes.com, please. Read, view, watch more of the fantasy football content. And don't miss next week's Shoot the Gap when we welcome our friend Mace Reaney to the show. He is a top 10 IDP ranker, of course, in Fantasy Pros ECR. He is just a wonderful, wonderful IDP analyst in person. And you guys will be discussing the rookie prospects in the safety position, a little step up from the corner position. But hope you all enjoyed the show. We will see you next time.